Welcome back to the Take Flight podcast. Today's guest is Stephanie Fowler, founder of the designer bag brand Austin Fowler. And what makes Stephanie's story so compelling isn't just the brand, it's how she built it. She was a corporate executive and a mom to 4 kids with no background in design or manufacturing. And yet, somehow, she found time and energy to build something meaningful. Stephanie, I'm excited for our chat today. Thanks for joining me.
Thanks for having me. I'm thrilled to be here.
Good. So I want to hear all about Austin Fowler, but before we get there, I want you to take us back to maybe a year or two before the Austin Fowler brand began.
Absolutely.
And kind of understand what you're going through, mentally, emotionally, physically at that time and where you were. And then we can kind of get into kind of where Austin Fowler is today, if that sounds okay.
That sounds great.
So how long ago did Austin Fowler begin?
Yes. So we're actually coming up on year 11 this year. So
Okay.
unbelievable to think that it's been over a decade that we have been building this brand. It's gone fast, but then when you look back on some of those earlier memories, it really, that was a long time ago. Where I was when we started Austin Fowler, I was a corporate executive in private industry. I was working full time, had at that time just 3 kids under the age of 2. We added a 4th one after.
Not busy at all. Not busy at all.
Nothing going on really, looking for something to do. And I felt I was pulled because I wanted to really excel in my career. I wanted to contribute and do a great job there, of course, but I wanted to be a very active and present mom. So you're trying to balance these very time consuming and intensive priorities, but I wasn't willing to let my family fall at all, of course. But what I started feeling at that time was just a little frazzled, a little pulled in different directions and certainly exhausted. You're really not sleeping much at that point. And so I was looking for solutions in my life on how I can make this work with a demanding career, a growing family, and I knew there had to be a way. So really started looking at a lot of different avenues. And one thing I noticed, after having little ones, he wasn't even 2 at the time. And then we had twin babies. And you just want to feel like yourself again. You want to feel pulled together, especially when you're going into the office. And I started even thinking about a bag. I started searching for a bag that would allow me to feel pulled together and polished, but keep our life organized because we love to be out and about with our kids and do that in an organized way. And I think the narrative at the time, and you still hear it quite a bit, is just, I'm such a hot mess. I'm just like, there's so much going on and it's so chaotic. And I thought, my goodness, like if I start living that way, life will just spiral, So I rejected that theory and I was looking for something that would just help me feel pulled together. And I couldn't find it on the market. So that was really the genesis of Austin Fowler. I never set out to build a bag brand. I knew at some point I would love to be an entrepreneur, but I never knew what it would be. So that's kind of what got us, my husband and I, thinking along those lines.
Interesting. Okay. So when did this go from this idea of, I don't have, there's a need for something like this in my life. I don't see it out there. When did it go from an idea to being a part of your identity?
Well, I think it was also a feeling of what I had in my corporate career. I loved the position I was in. I loved leading teams, but I also craved kind of that creative aspect. And I didn't necessarily have that, so I loved the business side, but I loved the creative side. And I was always thinking, okay, what's next for me? And so it wasn't that we thought right away we should build a bag brand and we are the right people to do this, but it was more of a question of why not and what could happen if we did this and what if it was successful. So we started just kind of playing around with it. And I realized I loved my time I was spending on it. And it was in the wee hours of the morning. I would go to work full time, come home, have dinner with the family, be with them. And when everyone went to bed, I would open a laptop on the couch late at night and just start kind of dreaming about this business and what it could be and what our life could look like. And that got me pretty excited for building something that I was truly passionate about that I thought could also help other women. So that was really kind of what started it. It wasn't even, it started with some grand business plan. It was just more of a belief of why not us? And let's just see where we can take this.
Yeah. So how long ago or how long before the official launch of Austin Fowler was this like starting to just kind of like percolate and start building?
Yep. So we built it in the background for about a year before we ever went to market with anything. And even when we went to market, we pre-sold things because we didn't have investors pouring money into this company,
Hmm.
and when you're at that stage, you also have little kids. So all your money is going into raising these little kids. And so we pre-sold some inventory, but prior to that, we just spent a year doing R&D, learning about materials, learning about the best way to design and construct these bags, meeting with manufacturers and just understanding the industry because neither my husband or I have a background in design, in manufacturing, in retail. So probably the least likely people that you would ever pull off the street to start a bag brand. There's a way to figure it out. And we just kept taking the next step and kind of piecing it together that way, I would say.
As my dad likes to say, everything is figure
It
outable.
sure is. Absolutely. Yep.
He heard that somewhere along the line, like the past 10 years, and I think I've heard it a million times out of his mouth. He's just like an eternal optimist and believes that, if you want to make something happen, you'll find a way to make it
I
happen.
agree with that wholeheartedly. Absolutely. Yep.
So I've had a lot of guests on the podcast, and I think you're the leader now with the most kids. So I think a lot of people that have kids always use kids as maybe this excuse of, I'm too busy to do this or take this on. I'd like to do it, but like we got sports, we got activities, we got trips, we got this, we got that. We got to make dinner, all this stuff. How'd that dynamic of having, I guess, 3 at the time, maybe 4 kids play into, the role in building the company?
Yeah. If you're waiting for the right time, you will never get started. There will never be a right time. You'll never have enough time to do it. You'll never have the expertise. You'll never have the money. You'll never have the courage, even maybe necessarily. You just have to go.
Hmm.
And it was not an ideal time for us at all. When your kids are that little, it is a very hands on parenting. You're doing everything for them. So it was a trade off. It was a trade off of, I was even more tired, but it was also the balance of I found something I was passionate about. So that was helping to fuel it, I would say. And if I would have waited, there would always be an excuse. Now my kids are in competitive sports that, now is not the ideal time to do it. But I also think that there's so much value in, especially your kids, seeing you build something and figure it out. And it's not perfect, but they have a front row seat to your entrepreneurial journey. And I think that's pretty incredible. But yeah, it's finding a way and it's finding pockets of time and going at your own pace. That is something that we've always owned the company ourselves because we didn't want the pressure of investors and having us put our foot on the gas if there was something in our family that needed our attention at that time. So we knew we had the flexibility to grow this at our pace and we're growing a company that we want to be around for decades to come, truly a heritage brand, a legacy brand.
Hmm.
And for that reason, that's not built overnight. That's not one of those companies that you're going to see scale at a breakneck speed. And we can't handle that with raising 4 kids and wanting to be very present parents. You just get started and you just go at your own pace, and you don't have the pressure. And I think also you can't necessarily follow traditional, well, just, quit your day job and go follow your heart and build that. Sometimes you can do that, sometimes you can't. I wasn't able to do
Hmm.
that. So my trade-off was I kept working during the day and building this late at night for quite a few years. And that's what you do. But I was able to launch it without the pressure of my family's not going to eat if we don't have a good month. So to
Yeah.
me, that was worth it to have that stability and just sacrifice a little bit of sleep for a short period of time.
That's wonderful. One of my previous podcast guests has this phrase about starting, and he says you just have to start messy.
Yep.
And like he said before, and it's a great reminder for people that there's never going to be the perfect time. You're always going to find a busy season of your
Yeah.
life and an excuse not to do something.
Yep.
But if you just accept the fact that it's not going to be perfect and it's going to be okay to be messy, and you're going to have some failures and roadblocks along the way, then that's part of that journey, right? Is knowing that that's going to happen. And that's probably where you're going to learn a lot from about who you are and your business too, is these down moments of this journey,
Yeah.
when you're going through these tough times. But I think it's really important. You mentioned something about having your kids having taken a front row seat to this whole journey. And something that people don't think a lot about. And I think I've thought about it a little bit too when I start take flight and do other things in my life with my kids being around. I don't want to let myself down, but I don't want to let them down. I don't see let them see me fail. But if your kids ever mentioned anything to you or noted, said like, "Hey, mom, I've noticed this about your business," or "How are things going?" or have you heard any like feedback from them along the
All
way?
the time. So it's pretty neat. Our boys are big into basketball and they always tell us they want to make it to the NBA. And they say, but we also want to build businesses, so that it's just neat to see that's already incorporated in. And, my dad, he was the former executive turned entrepreneur. He's had his company for decades. It's doing extremely well. And so I had a front row seat to watch him build that. And I always had so much admiration for my dad. And so that was something that I always wanted to do. I thought, well, that's just in our blood. We build something, and I think my kids have already taken that on. My 14-year-old son was just talking to me last night about the holding company that he wants to develop at some point, control all his other companies.
Oh,
It's really neat to see that filter through to them and for them to have their eyes wide open to what's possible too is
yeah,
really cool. So
yeah,
it's been fun and they see how hard it is too and that it's not
yeah.
risk-free entrepreneurship. I used to think it's for everyone. I don't believe that anymore. I don't believe everyone's personality is suited for that, but if it is, it's an incredible opportunity.
Yeah, that's great. I think the kids pick up so much on, and I've talked about it before, but like not so much what you tell them, but like what they see you do,
Absolutely.
your actions. They're always watching you. They're always seeing. They're keeping an eye on your work ethic and how you respond to situations, and that's the things that just sit with them, and that's what can help grow those kids. The parenting style that you have and your work ethic too. So I was curious about you talked about basketball, and we talked about before we jumped on here that you and your husband both played Division I basketball in college, right?
Yep.
Do you feel like any of that competitive nature of you and your husband kind of helps you or is kind of something you kind of hang your hat on as far as like your work ethic and your grittiness to get through
Yep.
certain things when starting a business?
Yep, 100%, and we talk about that often, and that's why we think sports can be so transformational for kids too, because it really instills in you a resiliency and a grittiness, because entrepreneurship is hard. It is very difficult, and it is obviously paved with uncertainty. If you have that identity of, "I just don't quit," I think that'll carry you very well through the journey of being an entrepreneur as well. But yeah, absolutely. That toughness, the grittiness, and competitiveness with yourself. I'm not necessarily competitive with others because I think we're all on a different path. We all have different goals but I never want to go backwards in terms of how I'm doing. I always want to beat what I did before. And I think that just comes from playing sports and growing up in that environment of, I want to make progress. I'm wired for progress because of that. So yeah, it's a huge part of who we are.
And so your husband's a big part of the Austin Fowler brand.
Yep.
What would you say about him if he's not listening right now? How has he helped you along the last 10, 12 years, just specifically with the journey of the brand?
Yeah. So he is my biggest supporter in absolutely everything I do. And it is the biggest blessing that we have been able to work together over the last decade. It took, a year or so to figure out how to work together well because I had come from the corporate world, he had come from the sports world, totally different, and he would say, "Okay, don't talk to me like I'm an employee." And it's like, "Okay, yeah, we're kind of level setting and figuring out how we work together." But he brings such tremendous strengths that I don't have to the table, and I just value his judgment and discernment so much, and we can bounce ideas off of each other. But more than that, I mean, you're in this journey with someone that knows you, knows your goals, and you have a vested interest together in making this work. And I would never want to do it any other way than, in partnership with him.
Yeah. How lucky are you?
Yeah.
You get to live your life, build a family, and grow a business at the same
It's
time.
incredible. We say that often, probably every week. We're like, I can't believe this is our life, you know? It's just and we've worked hard for it, but we are so blessed and not every week is beautiful and easy and, there's hard stuff, but you're going through it together and figuring it out together. And so it's been great, but you just learn to respect each other's strengths so much and how you see each other grow in the company too is pretty incredible. So It's
Yeah.
been fun.
That's awesome. Yeah. Yes. Congratulations,
Thank
by
you.
the way. That's really cool. So you talked a little bit about like not everything is great and perfect along the journey. What are some sacrifices that you make that maybe people, friends, other extended family don't see in your life?
Yeah. Well, I think it's you can be successful from the beginning, but we always had the long-term perspective as we were building Austin Fowler. So we always kept in mind that we want this company. We don't want to pull resources out of it quickly because we really want to set it up for success for decades to come. So we didn't take paychecks for years. And even after that, it's like you're paying yourself a fraction of probably what you
Yeah.
should, but you're more excited just to grow this and you know that it's going to be worth it in the end. And so it's a matter, I don't know that many people would be willing to put that much time and effort into it and not get the paycheck out of it that you would expect to get out of a corporate job or something else.
Yeah.
That's definitely a trade-off. But we don't even think of it like that. That doesn't bother us really.
Mhm.
Um, and it's just continually trying stuff. What we did even 3, 4 years ago is totally different now. It doesn't work now. So you have to be willing to pivot and continue to reinvent how you're doing marketing or whatever it is and figure out new ways. And I think some people kind of want to set it and forget it or okay, now we figured out the way, now we just run it. And you just can't sit back and rest on that necessarily.
Good. So I'll talk a little bit about your challenges, just kind of talking real for a second. Was there ever a moment that you thought this might not work?
That's a great question. I don't think I let myself think that. If I was being totally truthful, yeah, there's times where I would have said, "Come on, Steph. This
Yeah.
is this may not work,"
Okay.
but I didn't let myself think that because I have such a vision for where I want to take it. And truly, we can't fail unless we quit. That's the only way we can fail. We're pretty disciplined and careful with how we manage the financial resources of the company. And because of that, we've grown at a pretty responsible pace. We never get outside of, what we can fund ourselves. So there's really no way to fail in that sense. And so it's like, okay, if you're passionate about this, let's just keep going. And you see how devoted your customers are. And I think that's what keeps us going. And when we get emails and messages from customers that say, I carried your bag during a difficult time. Whether one of them was she had lost her daughter. And when she started carrying our products, it made her feel more like herself. And that was a customer that I ended up reaching out to, developed a friendship with. And we ended up naming one of our bags after her daughter because it was just such a neat story of the impact. And so when you see the impact it has on people, it's like, how could I
Hmm.
stop anytime soon? It just feels wrong because people have come to love this brand and it's their go to brand. And I feel like we'd be disappointing them if we did. And I feel like I have so much fire in me to keep going for a long time still.
Yeah.
I mean, I can't even when people talk about retirement, I'm like, "That doesn't sound fun to me. I love what I'm doing." You know?
Yeah. Then what?
I know, then what do I do? So, to me, this is a challenge to continually figure
Yeah.
out every year and, as long as you have the time to travel and be with your family and do what you want,
Yeah.
I see no reason to stop.
Yeah. That's a great way of looking at it too. I mean, I'm sure when you first started the business, you thought you were solving a problem that wasn't in the market. But then, as years go on and people buy your bags and they're living with their bags and their bags become part of their life, and you start hearing the stories of how the bag actually means something to them and it's a part of their life. And you hear stories like the one you just shared, and it's like, well, I thought I had a great bag and now I'm actually impacting people's lives and it's a part of who they are.
Yeah.
Like how cool is that? That's probably kind of an unexpected that may have come across
Yeah.
after the brand even started, right?
Yeah, yeah. No, Ryan, you're so right. It was something I did not ever imagine would have that deep of an impact on people, but the stories we've received are just so incredible. That's how it's like this was created for a purpose and I knew it would help me and it did. And I figured if it helped me, it would help thousands of other women and it has. So that's been really neat to see. And And when you see, when I'm looking through sales and I see familiar names and I check on their customer profile, I see that they've ordered from us 40 times
My
and we don't
gosh.
have a lot of SKUs. And I'm like, wow, that is someone who trusts your brand and feels
Yeah.
connected to it and is now they have pretty much we've seen people, they've sent us photos of Austin Fowler closets that they have with their shelves of product, and then they gift it to all their
Yeah,
friends and
I'm sure.
colleagues. And so to me, it's just, gosh, that is something I never expected and is probably my absolute favorite part of this company.
Absolutely. I mean, there's no greater testimonial than someone that's a customer buying more to give to someone else that trusts them and loves them. Like that's how much they trust your brand is they're willing enough to give it to one of their people they love
Absolutely.
in their life to have that in their life as well. So that's great. I love that.
Yeah.
So I know it's been a long journey to kind of get to your company without ever talking about what you actually do in your company. But now I want you to have the opportunity to share about Austin Fowler and the Big brand and kind of who you are and where people can find you and all the fun stuff about what Austin Fowler is.
Yeah. Well, thank you again, Ryan, for having me on this. This has been fun to chat about the story. Everyone's got a different entrepreneurial journey. And I know I always have soaked those stories up, through podcasts and books and anything I could
Yeah.
get my hands on. And everyone's story is so different. But Austin Fowler, so our big premise of what we do is we design bags and accessories that keep women really organized and polished on the go. So those are kind of the two tenets. It has to keep you really chic and polished so you feel good carrying it, which gives you kind of the confidence to go out into the world and use your unique abilities. But it also has to keep you organized because as women, a lot of times, you're managing a family, you have a career, oftentimes you're traveling, you've got so many facets of your life and you're going between these different responsibilities. And so you want something that is functional where you know where everything is. It has all the features thought out, whether it's a work bag that you're using, but it's got a luggage sleeve on it. So if you're going to the airport, you set it on top of your bag and and it's effortless travel. And a lot of those features, they've been things that have been pain points for me that we, design into our products, but they've also been ideas from customers that have given us incredible ideas there too. And we put those into our design. So it's continually evolving, our products are, but that's the big thing. We just want something that is chic and polished, but also very functional. Cause I could always find one or the other before, but I couldn't find
Hmm.
any brand that married both. So any product you ever see from us will have those two things in mind.
Excellent. And so where are people going to buy Austin Fowler? Is it online in stores?
Yes, primarily online. We are in some retail stores, but the best place to find us is on austinfowler.com.
Do you have one around nearby right now you could show?
I do. Let's see. Well, I've got a handbag with me, so there you go.
Well, there you go.
So, yeah, it's we have a lot of different styles, but again, it's just something that keeps you organized and I'm running around constantly, so it has to be something that keeps up with my life as a busy mom and business owner and all the things.
I love that. Well, cool. Thanks so much for joining. I want to end with one final question that I ask everybody, but with the Take Flight brand being what it is, I need some advice from you to others that may be on that verge of taking flight or doing something different with their life or embracing something.
Yeah.
Piece of advice that you could share that someone else could use to apply to their life.
Yeah. What I would say is doesn't have to be all or nothing. So you don't have to totally abandon what you're doing and go full force into something if you're not sure that you will love it. So there's a way to kind of start building it on the side or start doing it on the side, whatever it is, that you kind of have as a dream. But I would encourage you to do that just because I think the possibility of regret and not doing that is scarier to me than the thought of failure. I don't there's so many times I've looked back in the last decade and said, I'm so glad we started when we did. Even though we didn't know what we do now, but gosh, I'm glad we started when we did. Just being able to live with no regrets that if you had that dream and that goal, you're going to go for it and try it. And you can do it in a way that you're not just abandoning all of your security and whatever, but just get started, even in a small way, and just start to make progress on it little by little each week. And it'll be incredible to see, a year, 2 years from now, what you come up with.
Excellent. Thanks for sharing that. Stephanie, this was really awesome today. Thanks for sharing your story so openly. Thank you, everybody, for joining us, and we'll see you on the next one. Take flight.